Not much to say, guys. Not much to say. Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack. And tonight, our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Boston Celtics in Game 4 of what has quickly become a very competitive Eastern Conference semis. Down Jarrett already. The Cavs were also without superstar guard Donovan Mitchell, who was dealing with a strained left calf that kept him from taking part in the open portion of the team's shoot-around earlier. According to Cleveland.com's Chris Fedor, Mitchell actually watched film and underwent treatment instead. He did arrive at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for Game 4 about 2 hours before tip-off and did not warm up ahead of the game. That's a big-time gut punch for a team that has dealt with these types of derailments all season long. But before we dig into the specifics of it all, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that daily Cavs content. And don't forget to smash that like button. And if you want to help support the channel in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a paid member on Patreon. The link is already in the description. All right, now that the bills have been paid, let's get to the action. As I said, the Cavs were not only without the services of Jarrett Allen, who has missed the last 7 games now, if I'm not mistaken, but they were also without Donovan as well. And through 10 appearances during the 2023-24 postseason, Don is averaging 29.6 points, 5.4 boards, and 4.7 assists, while shooting 47.6% of his field goals, including 35.4% from beyond the arc. Don is essentially, or he had essentially been the Cavaliers' driving force so far during these playoffs. Him being out was a monumental loss. But with that being said, it does often lead to others getting opportunities and touches that they wouldn't normally be afforded in his presence. And I must admit, I was really surprised that the Cavaliers came out in the first quarter and dropped 30 points on Boston, considering their offensive woes so far during the playoffs. They came into tonight averaging 27.5 points per game in first quarters of this postseason. And the way that they were able to accomplish that was through the play of 2 players in particular, in my opinion. That was Mack, Strus, and Caris LeVert, each of which we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. And I got to say, they showed up exactly when the Cavs needed them to, for the most part. Strus finally got a shot to fall, knocking down numerous triples on the night. He would go 5 of 9 from three-point distance tonight, on his way to 15, 7, and 7. 3 of those triples came in the first quarter alone. But, I mean, he showed up. He finally showed up, and that, to me, is what counted the most, especially considering that he came in to this series shooting about 28% from three-point distance. He pulled up. He knocked them down. He knocked them off of catch-and-shoot triples. He hit from above the break. He hit them from the corners. And this is exactly the type of production that he was acquired to bring. And what better time to show up than when Donovan Mitchell is out against a Boston Celtics team that many people basically penciled in for a victory. I mean, quite literally, the line after Donovan Mitchell was ruled out was staggering the way that it ended up changing up. Ridiculously just a ridiculous change up in regards to the line. I'm trying to pull it up here. If you guys can see it, that is the line. That's what the line jumped to, from +8.5 to +12 once Donovan got ruled out. And to me, that just kind of echoes what many people felt about this game heading in, that the Cavaliers had absolutely no chance to win this game prior to the game being played. But that wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, sucks to lose. As Anaconda123 says down here, sucks to lose, but so proud of their effort. Also, the refs suck. Couldn't agree with that sentiment more. I mean, look, you never want to use referees as an excuse, and I'm not going to do that, completely. But I will say that I do feel like they played a huge role in this game. For the free throw disparity, 24 Boston free throws to Cleveland's 7, and 2 of those from Cleveland came off of technical fouls, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even more. They had 2 free throws by the end of the first half. They had 2 free throws by the end of the first half. That, in my opinion, shows you everything you need to know. I'm never going to be one to completely blame the refs for a loss like this, but I got to admit, man, I'm as pissed off as I probably should be for this loss. I'm not, man. Considering the players that were missing, that was probably one of the better performances that we probably could have gotten from this bunch. And I know that kind of sounds like a cop out, but I'm really not trying to sound that way. I did not feel pissed about tonight. It's in a performance in which LBJ was there to stomach it, in which he was able to watch the game along with his wife Savannah. Right, I didn't feel pissed. Yeah, I did not feel pissed about this game tonight, and the episode is titled "Is the Series Over?" In my opinion, I think so. I do not believe this team is going to be able to come back from a 3-1 lead. It's not impossible, but if I was a betting man, I wouldn't put my money on the Cavs to do that. They're just not equipped, especially if they do not have Donovan Mitchell in game 5. They might, well, in game 5, and Jarrett Allen, same thing, man. Same thing. I do not see a world in which this team will be able to extend this series past the next game. I just do not see it happening. Boston was able to come in and, establish their dominance over these last 2 games in many different regards. I thought tonight was a close game for the most part. I thought Cleveland actually showed up in the absence of those 2, and I was damn proud of them. I seriously was. You just look at the first half. I mean, aside from Max Strus, you had a couple of different guys stepping up, right? Levert was equally as impactful, at least in that first half, keeping the ship afloat, as Darius Garland got off to kind of a slow start. And Levert was antagonizing Al Horford on damn near every possession in which he scored on. The Cavs honestly would not have been in this game without Levert stepping up the way that he did. And speaking of DG, he kind of got off to a sluggish start, but he did manage to get things going, and he would eventually finish the game with 30 points and 7 assists on a pretty decent shooting numbers from the field. 12 of 27, from 3-point distance wasn't on that great, but I'll let it go. 4 of 13 from 3-point distance. But this is easily his best game against Boston. And obviously that comes with the caveat of Donovan Mitchell not being out there. So you have more touches, you have more freedom as the primary ball handler. And we already know what he is capable of when he is in that number 1 option mode. But it just wasn't enough to get the job done. Sucks, but I'm still proud of our guys. I'm still very, very proud of our guys. You look at the first half production in particular. In that first quarter, they went 6 of 9 from 3-point distance and 12 of 24 overall. That's good for 50%. And then the second quarter, they were okay, 5 of 16 from 3-point distance and 22 of 49 overall. 44.9%. Then you look at what Boston was able to do: 4 of 8 from 3-point distance in the first, including 14 of 21 overall, and 3 of 8 from 3-point distance in the second quarter. And they shot 60%. These dudes shot 60% from the field in the first half, yet they only entered with a 62-57 lead. They only led by 5 at the half. And as I said about the game, that was probably the best first half that we could have asked for, considering the guys that are missing. And in my opinion, I thought the Cavs played a damn good half of basketball. They really played a damn good game of basketball. Not everything, not everything fell for them. On the night, they went just 15 of 48. These dudes, our Cleveland Cavaliers, took 48 triples tonight. I know a lot of that came down to the wire when they were kind of just throwing shots up to kind of try and get it back up, get the score to within reach. But they still overall shot just 31% from 3-point distance, while Boston managed to convert on 38% of their shots. It's their bread and butter. It is exactly what they excel at, and we know that. They only took 32 threes tonight, and this has kind of been a continued trend for them. It's not something that I foresaw, honestly, heading into this series, but they have adjusted, right? We know that coming into this playoffs, Boston was shooting on average 42.5 triples per game, by far the most of any team in the NBA. They knocked down the most triples of any team in the NBA, but they've adjusted, right? We dared them to score in the paint after we beat them in game 2, and then they have come back in back-to-back games, and they've made themselves a presence within the painted area via their dribble drives by Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jrue Holiday, Derek White at points, even though Derek White's been struggling during this series. They scored 38 paint points to Cleveland's 42. And there were numerous things, in my opinion, that caused this game to sway. Number one, outside of the refereeing, right, outside of the free throws, it was a rebound disparity. The difference in regards to rebounding. And we know the Cavaliers playing an undersized lineup out there with Mack, Strus, Darius, Garland, Evan Mobley, Karis LeVert, and Isaac Okoro, right? You're coming in undersized, even without Kristaps Porzingis suiting up outside in Boston. You're still coming in with a undersized starting unit, which was able to contribute very little in terms of rebounding against this Boston team. Just brutal, man. 48-32 on the boards. Boston, in particular, the one thing that I say really, really hurt was the offensive rebounding. And some of the rebounds, I get they were long rebounds where the basketball kind of careened off the rim in a particular manner, to which impossible to calculate and impossible to technically be there for, or box out, or position yourself for. But still, their inability to rebound, especially on the defensive boards, Cavaliers' ability to close out possessions, to end possessions for Boston really hurt. Really, really hurt in tonight's game. Again, they won the rebounding battle 48-32. I just don't see many games in which a team will win when they lose the rebounding battle by 16. It just does not generally happen. And for Cleveland, that's kind of been the case for most of the series. They've been out rebounded in almost, if not every game. I got to go back and double check, but it has not been pretty on the boards. And we know why that may be, but I'm not going to sit here and act like it didn't matter, right? And this is where you're really missing a guy like Jarrett Allen, who can go out there and pull down some of those boards. Prior to him exiting, he was the NBA's third leading rebounder in the playoffs, behind Nikola Jokic and Anthony Davis. Jarrett Allen is really missed. Evan Mobley can only do so much in that regard. He did pull down 9 rebounds tonight, but of the two, you're obviously going to go with Jarrett Allen as your best rebounder. But with Cleveland going small and with Boston's ability to play 5 out with Al Horford being able to space the floor, it's tough to be in position or to have Evan Mobley in a position to which he can actually pull down more rebounds than he actually is, right? And we know what the deal is with Al Horford. He's coming off of back-to-back regular seasons in which he shot 40% or better from three-point distance. But at the same time, he has not been all that effective in terms of actual production, right? He contributed 6.6 rebounds tonight, but he went 3 of 9 from the field, including 0 of 4 from three-point distance, and he hasn't shot much better during the course of this series, right? And so his ability to space the floor has been limited severely. It's kind of been limited to just generating gravity, right? Pulling Evan Mobley out of the painted area, and unfortunately, it works. Right. That their ability to play 5 out is very tough for Cleveland to account for, even when they're playing small, even when you have Isaac Okoro starting the game at the power forward position. It's a tough thing to try and account for if you're Cleveland, especially when you don't have the requisite offensive firepower to keep pace with them on most nights. I thought tonight, all things considered, they did their best. Guys actually stepped up. You actually got a really good game from Darius Garland. Mack Strus played the best game that he's played so far in this postseason, in my opinion. Evan Mobley continues to be a factor on both sides of the ball. And then Caris LeVert, right? Caris LeVert, as we've often said, when he plays well, it seems like the Cavaliers generally play well. And I thought that he had a pretty decent game for the most part, at least in the first half. The second half wasn't nearly as impactful, but I thought all things considered, compared to what he has been able to provide in these past couple of games, it's been head and shoulders above what he's been able to give the Cavaliers, especially considering that he contributed that from the starting unit, right, in his 39 minutes. You look to some of these other things here. Isaac Okoro in back-to-back games has now been kind of a non-factor, and that's a huge reason why he only played 21 minutes tonight. Just gave you 2 points, went 1 of 8 from the field, and 0 of 4 from three-point distance. Now, I said this in my breakdown of the series. I thought Isaac Okoro could be an X factor, and turns out he's been an X factor, but in the negative connotation, right? In the negative way. His inability to generate space, his inability to make Boston pay for leaving him wide open is really, really hurting the Cavs in certain regards. We know what he can bring to the table from a defensive standpoint. That's all fine and dandy. You guys know I love my guy Isaac, but he's got to be able to hit these shots. He's got to be able to get out in transition and knock down his looks. He's got to be able to finish at the rim, and he's had a little bit of trouble doing that. Boston is making life difficult in that regard, but he also has to be able to knock down the perimeter shots that Boston is affording him so much space. Trying to step into the chat here a little bit. I'm not trying to ignore you guys. Naz Dallin says series was over when faced Celtics. I mean, if that's the way you see it, that's the way you see it. And that's fine, right? No NBA analyst, no journalist out there, at least in the larger media, selected Cleveland to win this series. Absolutely nobody. The only people that felt like Cleveland had a chance to win this series were in Cleveland, right? Or were fans of the Cavaliers. I remain of the belief that had they had Jarrett Allen, had they had Donovan Mitchell, this series could be going in a much different direction, but that we don't have them. And we can't play that game, right? The if then and all the questions, right? You have the guys available that you have available, and you have to make the best of what you have. And I thought that Cleveland, for better or worse, they put together a pretty good effort tonight against a very good Boston Celtics team. Just could not ultimately get the job done. Jay Dias says, lack of a real wing is going to hurt us until we fix it. I believe that they will address the wing in the draft. I do have draft content dropping tomorrow on a prospect that we all know and love. I will leave that to you guys' imagination, but I will drop that tomorrow. And the closer and closer this series becomes to ending, I will probably be releasing more and more draft content as we kind of gear up to see what Cleveland ends up doing with the 20th overall pick. We're not there yet, though. I I refuse to talk draft in a serious manner until this Cavaliers team has been completely closed out, which with the series heading back to Boston for game 5, um, it certainly looks like they may be closing it out on their home floor. Now, I had Nikki Goel of Cavs Nation on the pod just 2 back following game 2, right? Following the game 2 victory. And he says if they go to 6, which game 6 will be held in Cleveland, by the way, that we could possibly push this game to 7, push the series rather to 7 games. I'm not sure it gets that far, to be honest. I'm not sure it gets that far. If I was a betting man, I would not put my money on the Cavaliers to leave Boston. I do feel like this series is over. I'm not ruling it out, but I got to keep it 100, right? I got to call a spade a spade. I I do not believe that they're going to be able to walk into Boston in Game 5 and win. Right? They put together a damn Herculean effort from guys that haven't normally stepped up tonight, and they were not able to get the job done. It just shows you the power of this Celtics team, the depth of this team, how they're able to overcome lackluster nights from the likes of a Derek White, who has just been struggling, right? Coming off a first round series against the Miami Heat, in which Derek White looked like possibly the best player in Beantown for that series. I'm not saying he is the best player. Let's put that in perspective. I'm saying that he looked like the best player on the court for much of that series. Even going as far as to be the first Celtic in 25 years, if I'm not mistaken, to score 15 plus points in back-to-back first quarters of 2 games in that series. But even with him struggling, giving it just 5 points on the offensive side of the ball, they managed to largely overcome that. We know that they're not a team who gets a ton of contributions from a points perspective out of their bench. They got 22 points from the likes of Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett, Sam Hauser tonight, and they're damn efficient, right? But they don't get a ton of contributions from their bench. They ride their starters pretty heavily, and that is evidenced by Jason Tatum and Jrue Holiday's minute totals, right? 44 minutes for Jason Tatum tonight, who had an excellent game. At least from a points production standpoint, 33 points on 11 to 25 from the field. And we know that this man, as much as it pisses me off, he draws a ton of contacts, and he has a favorable whistle. However people feel about that, the NBA, they reward superstars most of the time, and Jason Tatum kind of qualifies as that, having led his team to an NBA Finals in the past and continued playoff success. He has earned the whistle calls. It, as much as it pains me to say, and you felt that tonight. You felt that all series long. It just often seems like the refs are heavily they lean his way in terms of calls. If he draws contact, they're generally going to give him that call, and I've come to expect that because that is just part of Jason Tatum's game. He is very good at drawing contact, especially at his size. And then we have, Jrue Holiday, who didn't really show up from an offensive perspective for much of this playoffs and really, to begin this series. But in now back-to-back games, he's had pretty damn good games. And you think about that. On a team as stacked as Boston is, Jrue Holiday is but a role player, right? We're talking about a former all-star, all-defensive player here. In Jrue Holiday, who is relegated to role player status, and he's been damn fine. I love it. I love it, from an objectivity standpoint. I would love to have a player like Jrue Holiday on this roster, but it just shows you the amount of talent that they have been able to accumulate. Parmjot Sandhu says, you mean his push-off game? He pushes off so much and no call. Yeah, look, I'm not denying it. I am not denying it at all. I'm just simply saying that I do believe that the calls that he is getting is because of his star status, right? A lot of times refs will reward these types of guys who have earned the respect, quote unquote, of the league, for lack of a better term. And he gets those calls, man. He's damn good at generating calls. He's not like a foul baiter, the likes of Trae Young, or, we saw even Jalen Brunson do this a couple nights ago, right? Where he's trying to yeet you into drawing fouls from beyond the arc most of the time. He just gets a ton of contact from inside off of dribble penetration. And that can only go one or two ways. Either you get the call or you don't. And a lot of times he was getting the call. It's just what happens. The only champ who says the NBA is ignoring the fact that the finals won't be entertaining. It's going to be a blowout for whoever wins the West. I mean, it might be, but considering if Boston is able to get out of the Eastern Conference, I'm not so sure about that. I don't think it's going to be a massacre or anything like that. You look at the likes of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have a terrific defense and a pretty damn good offense as well, with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns out there at certain points, even though Cat routinely doesn't show up in the playoffs. I got to admit that, but that's a whole nother conversation. That's not our team. I suffice it to say, though, I do believe that if Boston, of all teams in the East, comes out, I don't think it'd be a massacre. I don't think the West is just going to completely run ramshad on the on whoever comes out of the East. But I do like what Parmjot says down here. Mavs, Celtics will be a fun watch, not gonna lie. Yeah, anytime you can get, stars the likes of Luka and Kyrie and Jalen and Jason out there, I think that would be great. From the NBA perspective, from an offensive standpoint, these are two teams that could score with the best of them out there, especially from an individual standpoint. Parmjot also says, can we talk about the offseason now? Let's be honest, it's over, guys. Nah, man, I'm not going to do that just yet. Again, like I said, I'm dropping some draft content tomorrow in regards to a particular prospect. I'll let you guys think about who that might be. But until this team gets eliminated, I'm trying to stave that off as much as possible, because there's going to be a ton of time to talk about the offseason, about potential moves, trades, whether or not Don is going to stay, JB, if it gets canned, things of that nature. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this right now just listen to me say, if JB is going to stay, we know JB is going to be fired. But I'm trying to stay kind here. But I'm trying to stave off that offseason talk until this team gets eliminated. And it's not looking like they're going to be able to leave Beantown with a W, but anything's possible, right? Anything is possible. And I have to keep hope alive. Maybe they can extend the series to 6 games. I walked into this series feeling like it was more than likely that Boston would win, but I've always held faith that they would be able to, push this team to 6 or 7. And the question then becomes, if you do that, is that enough for Donovan Mitchell to be able to say, you know what, let's run this shit back and we'll try and add where we can, right? Whether that be moving a piece of the core, or drafting, or trying to make a couple of trades on the margins, right? There's a couple of different routes that this team can go, but again, I'm not going to dive into the rabbit hole that is offseason talk until we get to that point. Kirk Davis says we should have won that game. I believe so too, man. I thought the Cavaliers played a damn fine game tonight. Sans Donovan, sans Jarrett Allen, and they got guys to step up who hasn't normally stepped up. 30 from Darius hasn't been the common theme throughout this playoffs. Mack Strus knocking down 5 triples, showing exactly why we signed him. Guys stepped up. Karis LeVert, right? I do feel like they played a damn fine game. They just could not pull out the victory. You can look at whatever factors you want, rebounding, the refereeing, lack of shot making down the stretch, because they were shooting the basketball very, very well entering halftime. They were 11 of 25, if I'm not mistaken, from 3-point distance entering the half, and they would finish the game shooting just 31%. They would make 4 triples total in the second half. I listened to the broadcast, at TNT, they basically echoed the same sentiment we all were feeling like, right? It was probably not going to be sustainable. Boston shot 60% at halftime, right? They were shooting 60% on their field goals by the half, and they led by 5. But despite that, Cleveland was hanging on because they were able to get that 3 ball to drop. They could not sustain that level of offensive production in the third and fourth quarters, as they were only to knock down 4 additional triples through the final 2 frames. And anytime that happens, especially against the Boston Celtics team who can light it up, frankly, from 3-point distance, that's generally not going to yield good results. And that's exactly what happened tonight, in addition to their inability to pull down timely defensive rebounds. Keeping Boston off the glass was always going to be a priority in this series. I talked about it ad nauseum in my breakdown for it. As painstaking as it can be to, look at that in particular, because we always know with this Cavaliers team, it was always going to come down. One of the key factors in all of these series, not just the Orlando series, but this Boston series as well, rebounding was always going to be something that the Cavaliers were going to need to try and figure out, right? And they have been unable to solve that riddle, especially without Jarrett Allen out there. Kirk Davis says, I say, though, I think we gave them a run for their money. At least we didn't get blown out like the Knicks. Yeah, we did. I'm honestly proud. I'm honestly proud of the Cavaliers' performance tonight. They could have gotten shellacked tonight without Donovan, without Jarrett. They didn't. This was a game until it wasn't. This was definitely a game until it wasn't. Jay Dias says, not having another backup reliable big was a mistake. I think that they saw what they were getting, the production that they were getting from Tristan Thompson in the early going, even though it was coming off of PDs, right? And they said, you know what? We can probably make do with the likes of Damian Jones, Dean Wade, bringing on Pete Nance as a two-way for the regular season anyways. And they said, you know what? By the trade deadline, we're not going to make a big move to acquire a big man. Their big move at the buyout deadline was Marcus Morris, right? And I do not believe Marcus Morris saw the court tonight. Played 0 minutes. Damian Jones hasn't really played at all in a meaningful manner in this postseason. We know Jarrett Allen is out. So their big man rotation is literally Isaac Okoro starting at the 4. Evan Mobley obviously is your center, and then you're getting whatever production you can get out of Dean Wade, who just returned. He's only his second game back, right? And then Tristan Thompson in whatever minutes he can give you. And tonight, Tristan played just 9 minutes, and he's going to be hit and miss, especially in a series like this where Boston, they play 5 out. They have Al Horford out there, and they can play small ball. Sometimes that just does not favor Tristan Thompson because he's not quick enough to be able to keep up with some of these guys. You look at some of the matchup dependent things, right? Like when they have Luke Cornett out there, who's been an excellent an excellent role player for them in limited action since Kristaps Porzingis went down. Again, another impactful night. In 19 minutes, he gave Boston 9 points and was able to pull down 6 big boards. It's that type of production that the Cavaliers are missing, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up in my in one of my recent draft videos. I pondered whether or not the Cavaliers should look at taking a prospect like Yves Missy out of Baylor. And I know the answer on that is probably no, because the Cavaliers are probably going to want to address the wing position, specifically a big wing. But it's one of the reasons why I'm saying to myself, hey, this Cavs team still needs a backup 5. And, one of the comments that I got during that video was, well, if they want a center so much, a backup center, why not look at Khalifa Diop? I still don't believe Khalifa Diop is ready at the NBA level. So I still think that they need to address that position and heading into the offseason, because I don't want Tristan Thompson to, I would love to have Tristan back, right, on the roster, but I don't want him playing meaningful minutes in the postseason. And I don't think it's nice to whatever contributions he can give you, that's fine and dandy, but to go into a series expecting the likes of Tristan Thompson to give you minutes, valuable minutes, especially when you're down Jarrett Allen, probably not going to yield favorable results most of the time. We already discussed what Damian Jones is giving you. I see the only champ mentioning what's wrong with the Mobley brother. Mobley is not on the active playoff roster, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's the same thing with Emoni Bates, Pete Nance, guys like that. They can't play those guys in the postseason because they're not postseason eligible, if I'm not mistaken. Chaz Orlando says, I think maybe Travers can be that wing. I like Travers. If you haven't watched my recent video on him, go ahead and check it out. It kind of details what he's been up to since he's been over, since he went back to Australia with Melbourne United. Had a really, really good run this season. Awesome stuff for him. But yeah, I mean, I think that he is like the ultimate glue guy. I think he could give the Cavaliers a knot. I mean, a lot rather. It's up to the team though to ponder whether or not he's ready to come over. And so they would know more than we know. Cedric Taylor says or asks, does LeBron come back next year? I think so. And we're all saying LeBron was at the game tonight. That was a cool sight, right? And maybe it's nothing more than optics. Maybe it's nothing more than LeBron just coming to watch his hometown team, right? A team that he spent 11 seasons with. Maybe it was simply just that. I don't know. Something tells me that LeBron is watching this Cavaliers team and thinking to himself, you know what? I don't have shit else to give LA. They're a sinking ship. I don't see a championship as being a possibility over there. And maybe considering declining his player option. And I think it's already been reported that he's declined it, right? But I think that this is a serious destination or a consideration for a destination for him. I do believe that he's looking at the pieces that we have here and thinking to himself, you know what? I like what's going on in Cleveland. Maybe I give it one last run. Maybe this is where I finish my career at. But we all know Bronny plays a role in this. I'm sure the Donovan Mitchell decision is going to play a role in this. There's a lot of things that play a role in a potential LeBron James return. If I had to bet right now, I would say I would not put my money on it, but I would not be surprised at all if LeBron mysteriously ended up in Cleveland next season. I don't know, maybe Bronny too. But again, that's the off season. I'm not going to go that deep into semantics here. It certainly could end up being the case, but I'm trying to keep it within this season still. At the very least, Cavs fans, we have one more game. The season is not over yet. Maybe if you're listening to the pod right now, maybe that's not what you came for. Maybe you came here looking to hear a frustrated guy up here yelling and ranting and raving. I'm not going to do that. I thought this team played a wonderful game tonight for the most part. I thought that they got really good contributions out of guys who haven't normally stepped up. And if they play like that in game 5 in Boston, I don't know. Anything is possible. If you get this series back to Cleveland, if Donovan is able to come back, if guys continue to play like they did tonight, I still see a possibility. I wouldn't bet on it. I do not believe they have what it takes to get out of a to overcome a 3-1 lead, a la the 2016 Cavaliers did in the finals. But anything's possible. If anybody can do it, it's this Cavaliers team who has history doing similar things on a big time stage, like the NBA Finals, right? And so, props to this Cleveland team for overcoming much adversity tonight. They could not get the job done, but I'm not going to sit up here and be too much of a sourpuss about it, considering we didn't have Donovan, we didn't have Jarrett, and I saw some good things tonight. I do hope that they're able to carry a similar type of performance into Boston, but time will definitely tell. And I'm hoping for the best. That is all I can say. I'm not ready for the offseason yet. Please, for the love of God, Cleveland, just stave off the offseason. Just stave it off for at least one more game. I'm not ready to hear all of these questions just yet. I'm not ready to hear all of the, is Donovan staying? Should we move Darius Garland? Should we trade Jarrett Allen for Brandon Ingram? There are just so many different things that are already being talked about in reference to the offseason for this Cavs team, and to each their own. Everybody, we all want to see this team improve, and I understand looking ahead into the future. It's why I'm doing my draft content right now, but I'm not wanting to talk about it ad nauseum. Kirk Davis says, hopefully we make a comeback. Agreed, my brother. I hope we do. Anything is possible, but the Cavaliers, they're going to have to overcome major adversity to be able to do that. Trey Ghostman says they need Allen and Spider to go Wednesday, or it might be a wrap. Certainly could be. Again, the title of the episode is the series over? Certainly could be. Game 5 could be the end of the Cavalier season. If that happens, it's open season, right? This Cavs team, I don't know, right? Don, a lot of the future for this team is going to hinge on whether or not Don says, you know what, I want to be here for the long haul. Now, to those of you who do not know, Donovan Mitchell's player option is for 2025-26. It's not this offseason. So we could enter this offseason full well saying, you know what, we're going to just ride this shit out. We're going to see what decision Don comes to in the following offseason. But at that point, you do risk losing Don for potentially nothing unless you're planning on trading him mid-season before the deadline, right? There are a lot of different routes. But if it goes that route, the one thing that'll happen is that his trade value, is going to diminish the longer and longer it takes. I have my beer sitting over here this entire time. I'm talking a lot. A lot of his trade value is going to diminish the longer and longer he waits out a contract extension. It's fully possible that the Cavaliers are saying, you know what, we made this bet. We're going to lie in it. We're going to wait and see what he does. But we shall see. We shall definitely see. Maybe he doesn't make a commitment. Maybe the Cavaliers say we're going to use this offseason to make a major change, and we'll see if we do that, if we're able to advance far enough, maybe Donovan will want to stay next offseason. But there's a lot of different routes that this can go, but time will tell. Time will definitely tell what this team will look like heading into the 2024-25 season. But we're not there yet. Hopefully we get to save that talk for at least another game or two before we have to really go down that route. I've kept you guys here long enough, so I'm just going to wrap this whole thing up by saying what I always tell you guys. If you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, which I'm trying to get more active, by the way, send a screenshot. Send a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I'll send you an invite. I'm trying to do a better job of checking that out. And as I kick the episode off by saying, if you want to support the channel in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a paid member on Patreon. You guys don't know how much that helps out with this content creation. I do it because I love it, obviously, but I do put a lot of time into it. And if you want to help your boy out, consider becoming a paid member over there. It definitely helps. The link is in the description. With that said, hopefully we get to see this team play for a few more games, not just one. And go Cavs. Have a good night.